Hey there, GCF Community Groups. This is our first community group video for the winter-spring semester of 2017. And this Sunday we were in the third week of this message series called Read Me. And our overall theme was Read Me as a Story. And I have two books that I want to show you this week. This is the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. And this is Here I Stand. It's a biography about the church reformer Martin Luther. Now, I read this book, Here I Stand, several years back when I was flying to a class and back from a class. And so in the two legs of that flight, I read this book from beginning to end. And the reason I read it from beginning to end is that it's a story. And to understand the story, I needed to start in the beginning and I needed to end at the end. It wouldn't have made sense to have picked up halfway through because I would have been missing half of what was important and how the thing was being shaped together. Now, this book I use just about every week in preparing sermons because this is a resource book. So if there's a particular topic that I have a question about that I need to know more about, I can turn inside of this thing. There are 4 volumes of it, find the article that I need and read about that article and find some really directed help for the thing that I need to know more about. And the way we use these two books really describe the way the Bible is often used because more often than not, we tend to use the Bible as a resource book. So we need to know something about prayer. We need to know something about confession. We need to know something about raising our children. We need to know something about how to deal with some emotional turmoil that we're facing. We need to know something about how to handle money or handle our marriage. And we use the Bible as a resource book, and we look for passages and sections of the Bible that have to deal with those things. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how most of us have grown up using the Bible. But there's also a sense in which the Bible, as we talked about on Sunday, is a story. And because it's a story, you need to kind of be familiar with how it works and what's in it from beginning to end. Because even more than a resource book, the Bible is this great story that God is actually writing in history. And so we need to be able to think of the Bible from beginning to end. And so I mentioned to you on Sunday, we talked about Stephen and how Stephen, in defending himself when he was hauled before some Jewish officials, retold the story of the Old Testament and told them that one of the reasons they didn't understand who Jesus was is because they weren't thinking about their Old Testament as a story. And if they were thinking about the Old Testament as a story from beginning to end, they would have a better understanding of how Jesus fit into the story that God is telling. So one of the things Stephen teaches us is that it's important to understand that the Bible is a story from beginning to end. And so on Sunday, we spent a good bit of time in the message looking at how Stephen tells it as a story. I included some of the information from the very, very beginning that Stephen doesn't include, and I used some of told a lot of the end of the story because Stephen stops at an end, but not quite at the end of the Old Testament story, so that we could kind of see how all of that fits together so that this Sunday we can understand how Jesus comes as the climax of the story, how Jesus resolves the problem in the story, and how there is a happily ever after that we're all waiting for in this story. Now, I know a lot of that story that I retold on Sunday to a lot of people is stuff that if you've been in church for a while, you know kind of the story of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and Joshua and King David and Solomon and even some of the later kings and the prophets. And you may have been going, well, what difference does this really make? I kind of knew that already. Well, that's why I said you have to hang on for the 5th week of this series after we've looked at these two parts of the story this past Sunday and this coming Sunday. In that 5th week of the series, I'm going to talk about how understanding the Bible as a story makes has really important impact on those times when you're going to look at the Bible as a resource book and you're trying to find out information about something that's bothering you, how Jesus wants to talk to you about something that you're facing in life. So it really makes a huge difference in how we use the Bible that way. So the main theme from Sunday was read me as a story. And so here are 3 jumping off questions for you this week. The first one is this: which way do you typically think of the Bible, and which way best describes the way you most often use the Bible? Do you think of it and use it as a resource book that will hopefully help you meet your needs or understand specific things that you're facing or specific things that are going on in your life? Or do you think you more often read the Bible and use the Bible like you would a novel that contains an amazing story, thinking about it and looking at it from beginning to end. There's not a right or wrong answer to that question. Just share with the group which way you typically think about the Bible and which way you typically tend to use the Bible. Notice there, I asked you, what way do you use it? So try to avoid talking about how other Christians use it and how other people you know use it. Just share with your group the way that you primarily use the Bible and understand the Bible. The second thing I want to encourage you to talk about in your community group, with your community group this week, is what difference do these two approaches make in how you understand the Bible? So if you're using it as a resource book, how is that different from using the Bible or reading the Bible as a novel or as a great story? What's the difference between these two things? What's the impact that reading the Bible as a story versus reading the Bible as a resource book? What's the impact that either one of those have on you, and how are they different? And the third question is not just about the idea of read me as a story from this Sunday, but we've had three themes so far in this series. So in the first Sunday, I talked about the idea of reading the Bible for Jesus. That is, that God's primary objective with the Bible is to point you to the truth and the reality and the person of Jesus Christ. And the second week, we talked about reading the Bible with Jesus. And I gave you a particular way, not the only one, but a particular way that you can go about treating the Bible as a textbook, but allowing Jesus to be the teacher. Who is with you as you're using the textbook, so that you're not asking, what does the Bible say, but you're asking, what is Jesus saying to me? What is Jesus saying to us through the Bible? So read me with Jesus. And this Sunday, we talked about read me as a story. And so what I want to suggest you talk about in your groups tonight, also in addition to those first two questions, is which of these ideas in this sermon series so far, read me for Jesus, read me with Jesus, read me as a story, has been most challenging, most helpful, most impactful to you, and share with your group kind of what this series and how this series is maybe causing you to think, maybe shaping and transforming the way you look at the Bible and read the Bible. So that's all for this week's community group video. I know I'll see most of you in church on Sunday, and I'll probably see some of you around town before then. Have a good group meeting, guys.